Luxury revolutions rarely announce themselves. They arrived disguised as creative decisions. For decades, the rules of prestige were locked to coordinates on a European map. Elegance was a product of Paris, fashion belonged to Milan, and Geneva held the monopoly on precision manufacturing. But in a world of hyper-manufactured goods, a European zip code is no longer enough to command top-tier value. The geographic model of luxury has reached a point of stagnation. On the maps used by heritage houses, Africa historically occupied a single, narrow slot, an unrefined source of raw materials and aesthetic inspiration. Publisher Grace Mumeau calls this dynamic the colonial warehouse model of luxury storytelling. In this system, brands mined the continent for textures and motifs to fuel their collections, while denying African creators any authority over how the final story was told. This leads to the central tension of modern luxury. Does the manufacturer define value, or the storyteller who provides the meaning? An industry that extracts inspiration without sharing narrative control is structurally unbalanced. 2026 marked the beginning of the correction. The shift began with Baccarat, the historic French crystal house. For centuries, the brand's visual identity was built on the act of looking at the product. The crystal was the subject, and the consumer was the observer. That changed when Baccarat handed its visual storytelling to South African photographer Bolofo. This went beyond a standard marketing campaign or a temporary capsule collection. It was a transfer of narrative authority from a European institution to an African creator. When a house like Baccarat prioritizes a specific photographer's perspective, they acknowledge that for the modern consumer, the lens through which the crystal is seen is as critical to the brand as the crystal itself. Bolofo's visual language relies on monochrome to strip away distractions. His work avoids the exotic framing and safari spectacles traditionally expected when Africa intersects with luxury. This technique achieves what theorists call the reversal of the gaze. Instead of luxury brands looking at Africa as a subject, they are now looking at the world through an African lens. The gaze is the ultimate tool of control in commerce. When the perspective shifts, the cultural and economic power follows the lens. Baccarat is not an outlier. Global heritage maisons are now reacting to this shift in authority. In an era of mass production, material perfection and flawless manufacturing have become common. While the perceived value of material perfection plateaus, the demand for authentic cultural interpretation climbs past it. Global brands are seeking out African creatives to supply the authenticity that manufacturing alone can't provide. The future belongs to creators who possess deep emotional intelligence and understand meaning, not just how to produce goods. The Colonial warehouse is closing. The Sovereign studio is open. Africa is now the world's premier exporter of soul, the authentic interpretation that gives a physical object its value. As Grace Mumeau argues, luxury no longer exports aspiration, it imports perspective. In an economy where narrative is the supreme currency, African storytelling has become the most valuable luxury reserve for the next generation.